He leaned toward me across the courtroom table, wrists already cuffed, eyes cold and familiar. "You destroyed your own family," he whispered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I leaned closer and said, "No, I told the truth. You did the destroying." If you've ever been silenced by the people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever swallowed the truth because it was safer to stay quiet, hit like, subscribe, and buckle up, because this story isn't about revenge fueled by rage. It's about revenge built on memory, and memory never forgets. They taught me 3 rules growing up. Don't ask questions, don't talk to cops, and never, never say our last name out loud. Not at school, not on the phone, not even if someone asked nicely. Our name wasn't protection, it was a trigger. My father ran half the docks in New Jersey. That's how people said it when they wanted to sound casual, like he managed shipping schedules and payroll, like he wore a tie and complained about tariffs. What they meant was this: ships moved when my father said they moved, trucks rolled when my uncles nodded, and men who caused problems stopped causing problems. Quietly. On Sundays, we were a normal family. The house smelled like garlic and tomatoes simmering low. My grandmother rolled dough at the kitchen table, her hands dusted white with flour. Uncles argued about football. Cousins chased each other through the halls, knocking into furniture that cost more than most people's cars. On Sundays, we laughed. On Mondays, men went missing. No one ever said that part out loud. You didn't have to. The silence said it for you. I was the mistake. Not because I was born a girl. They didn't care about that. Not really. I learned early that power doesn't always wear misogyny on its sleeve. Sometimes it just wears indifference. I was the mistake because I remembered things. Other kids forgot, or pretended to, or learned how to blur the edges of memory until it didn't hurt anymore. I didn't. When I was 12, I woke up thirsty. That's how it always starts in my mind. Something small and stupid. A dry throat, bare feet against cold tile, the house quiet in that deep, hollow way it gets after midnight. I was halfway down the stairs when I smelled it. Gasoline. Sharp. Chemical. Wrong. It didn't belong in our house. It didn't belong anywhere near it. My stomach tightened before my brain could catch up, a warning I didn't yet know how to interpret. The garage light was on. I remember gripping the banister, fingers slick with sweat, and leaning just enough to see. My cousin Marco was there. He was older, strong, always smiling too wide, like he was in on a joke no one else understood. He was dragging a man across the concrete floor. The man was bleeding. Not dramatically, not like in movies, just leaking. Dark stains smearing beneath him, leaving streaks where Marco's boots slipped. The man was conscious. That's the part that still crawls under my skin. His mouth moved. No sound came out at first. Then a hoarse, broken noise pushed free. Not a scream, more like air tearing through something damaged. I froze. Gasoline sloshed in a red plastic can near the wall. The smell was so strong it burned my nose. My eyes watered. My heart pounded so loud I was sure Marco would hear it. He didn't look up. He was humming, some stupid pop song from the radio. The screaming stopped too fast. That night, my mother scrubbed the garage floor until her knuckles bled. I sat on the stairs and watched her back rise and fall, shoulders shaking silently. She didn't look at me. Not once. No one explained anything. They never did. By 16, I understood. Not in one big revelation, in pieces. A whispered argument cut off when I entered the room. An envelope slid across the table and disappeared into a jacket. A man kissing my father's ring when he thought no one was watching. Our money wasn't earned, it was taken, and my mother paid the price. She had lines around her eyes that didn't come from smiling, bruises she explained away with clumsy excuses, headaches that kept her in bed with the curtains drawn tight, like the light itself hurt her. She tried to leave once before. I didn't know that at the time. I only learned later, piecing together stories that slipped when people drank too much wine or got careless with their words. But the second time, she told me. I was 17. It was early morning, the kind where the sky is pale and undecided, like it hasn't chosen whether to be day yet. She stood in my doorway with a single suitcase. One suitcase. That detail still makes my chest ache. She looked smaller than usual, like she'd already started disappearing. "If anything happens to me," she said quietly, "remember this." Her hands trembled as she gripped the handle. "None of them are loyal." I laughed, nervous, confused. I told her she was being dramatic, that she'd be back by dinner, that Dad would cool off. She touched my cheek. Her hand was warm, solid, real. That night, her car went off the bridge. They said it was an accident. Rain-slick roads, a sharp curve, no witnesses. I stood at the edge of the river with everyone else, staring down at twisted metal half submerged in black water. Cameras flashed. Men shook their heads solemnly. My father held my shoulders. His grip was tight, too tight. I knew better. So did he. He just didn't care. At the funeral, people cried loudly, publicly, performatively. I watched their faces instead of the casket, memorizing who looked relieved and who looked afraid. After it was over, after the last hug and the last hollow apology, my father pulled me aside. His voice was calm, measured. "Your family," he said. "Family forgets." Something inside me went very still, like a switch flipping. That's when my revenge started. Not with screaming, not with threats, not with tears. I became invisible, the quiet daughter. I smiled when spoken to. I kept my head down. I got good grades. No rebellion, no drama, no questions. They stopped watching me. That was their first mistake. I listened, I remembered, and one day, I started recording. But that comes later. For now, I was just a girl at the dinner table, twirling pasta around her fork, nodding at the right moments, learning how monsters breathe when they think no one's paying attention, and waiting. I learned early that silence has weight. It presses on your chest. It makes your jaw ache from holding everything in. It turns every room into a test of survival. After my mother died, the house didn't feel bigger. It felt emptier. Her things vanished first. Her coat wasn't on the hook by the door anymore. Her mug disappeared from the cabinet. The faint lavender scent she loved, gone, replaced by cigar smoke and cologne and the sharp bitterness of espresso. It was like she'd never existed, and no one mentioned her. Not at dinner, not on Sundays, not even on the anniversary. The first time I tried, my father shut it down with a single look, the kind of look that said, "This conversation ends now." So I learned to bury my grief where it wouldn't be noticed. By 18, I was old enough to understand the rules clearly. Women didn't leave. Women didn't question. Women were currency. My aunts were living proof. Once, I heard my Uncle Sal tell his wife, "You're lucky you married into this family." She smiled. Her eyes were dead. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and threw up until my throat burned. The men got louder after my mother died, like her absence removed a dam. Business talk crept into dinners. Names dropped casually. Jokes made at the expense of people who weren't there to hear them. Marco was the worst. He liked reminding me that I was still here because they allowed it. "You got your mom's mouth," he said once, smirking. "Careful where you open it." I smiled politely and passed him the bread. Inside, my pulse thudded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I started noticing patterns: phones that rang only once, meetings that happened after dessert, men who arrived nervous and left relieved, or didn't leave at all. And then there were the cops. Not all of them, just enough. Uniforms showed up at the house like it was normal, like they belonged there. They ate my grandmother's food. They accepted envelopes without looking inside. I memorized faces. I memorized badge numbers. I memorized the way my father spoke differently to them, softer, but with an edge underneath, respect layered with threat. By 19, I knew one thing for sure. If I disappeared tomorrow, no one would look too hard. That thought sat in my stomach like a stone. College was never really an option. My father said education was fine as long as it didn't make me stupid, which was his way of saying, don't get ideas. I bought my first burner phone with cash, hid it inside a hollowed-out book, learned how to keep it charged without anyone noticing. At first, I didn't even know what I was collecting, just fragments. A voicemail left too long, a drunken confession recorded in the background of a party, a threat whispered in a hallway. I didn't plan yet, I just gathered. The real shift happened when they started talking about my future. It started subtly. You're not getting any younger. Nice girl like you shouldn't be alone. Family takes care of family. Then came the names. Men I'd seen before. Men who smelled like arrogance and violence wrapped in expensive suits. Men who looked at me like I was inventory. One night, my father laid it out plainly. You'll marry Luca, he said, cutting into his steak. Good family, good earner. I felt the room tilt. Luca? I knew Luca. He had hands that lingered too long, a temper that snapped without warning, a laugh that made my skin crawl. I don't want to, I said. The words came out small. The table went silent. Every eye turned toward me. My father didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. You don't want a lot of things, he said. You'll learn. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not visibly, but it cracked all the same. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, my mother's warning echoing in my head. None of them are loyal. I understood then what she'd been trying to save me from. And I understood something else. They weren't planning my marriage. They were planning my disappearance. Marriage was just the approved version. After that, the pressure intensified. Luca started showing up more, sitting too close, commenting on my clothes, making jokes about when, not if. Marco found it hilarious. Relax, he said, you'll be taken care of. I recorded that too. My hands shook the first time I realized what I had. Not just proof, leverage. By 25, my collection was no longer accidental. I had audio files labeled by date and name, burner phones linked to burner phones, bank transfers traced through shell companies, shipping logs with altered manifests. I knew which cops were dirty. I knew which judges looked the other way. I knew dates, so many dates, murders that never officially happened, accidents that followed arguments, men who vanished after meetings at the docks. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many ghosts lived in this house. And then Luca put his hand on my thigh at dinner, in front of everyone. I froze. No one stopped him. No one even reacted. My father watched me carefully, like he was waiting to see if I'd behave. I smiled. Forced, tight, perfect. Inside, my chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. That was the last insult. That night, I packed my own bag, not to run, to prepare. I knew exactly who to call, and for the first time since my mother died, I wasn't afraid. I was focused, because they thought I was loyal, and that belief was about to cost them everything. By the time the public learned what my family really was, I had already stopped being their daughter. That separation didn't happen in one clean moment. It happened in layers. Every sealed document, every recorded phone call played back in court, every time a prosecutor said my father's name like it was just another case file. I watched from a distance as the empire collapsed. News vans camped outside the courthouse. Reporters spoke in urgent tones about corruption, racketeering, conspiracy. They used words like dynasty and downfall and historic. They never used my mother's name. That stung more than I expected. Because this wasn't history to me, it was personal. The trial exposed things even I hadn't known. Accounts hidden overseas, bodies buried deeper than anyone suspected, deals made decades ago that still poisoned the present. Each revelation felt like opening another locked room in a house I thought I knew, and inside every room was blood. The prosecutors called it cooperation. The media called it betrayal. I called it survival. During breaks in testimony, I sat alone in a small room with a plastic chair and a paper cup of water that always tasted faintly of bleach. I watched my reflection in the one-way glass. I barely recognized myself. My eyes were sharper, harder, like something brittle had replaced whatever softness used to live there. Sometimes I caught glimpses of my family in the hallway. My uncles stopped shouting first. Then they stopped smiling. Then they stopped speaking altogether. Marco was the hardest to watch. The man who once hummed while dragging someone to their death now trembled on the stand, voice cracking as he tried to minimize his role. "I was just following orders," he said. I almost laughed. When it was over, when the judge read the sentences and the gavel finally came down, I expected to feel triumph. I didn't. I felt empty. Justice is quieter than revenge fantasies make it seem. There's no music swelling, no dramatic release, just a long exhale after holding your breath for years. I disappeared the same week. Witness protection doesn't feel like safety at first. It feels like erasure. New name, new birth date, new history. I practiced my signature until my hand cramped, learned my new past the way an actor memorizes lines, where I was born, what my parents did, why I moved. They told me to forget my old life. I didn't correct them. For months, every sound startled me. A car door slamming outside made my heart race. A knock at the wrong hour sent my stomach into freefall. I slept with the lights on, listening for footsteps that never came. Freedom takes time to sink in. I moved to a small town where no one knew my face, where the loudest crime was a stolen bike or a bar fight that ended in apologies. I got a job at a bookstore. It smelled like paper and dust and coffee. The owner asked me about my favorite authors and didn't care about my last name. For the first time, that felt like a gift. At night, I drank coffee slowly, not because I needed it, but because I could. I slept, really slept. No more waking up at every creak. No more rehearsing lies in my head before breakfast. No more fear tightening my chest like a fist. Sometimes people asked questions. Do you miss your family? Where are you from? Why'd you move here? I learned to answer without flinching. They're complicated. Back east. I needed a change. None of it was untrue, but the past doesn't disappear just because you rename it. Some nights I dreamed of my mother. She never spoke in those dreams. She just watched me, her expression unreadable. I always woke up with my heart pounding. I wondered if this was the price of what I'd done, if peace always came with ghosts attached. Then one afternoon, a customer asked me if I regretted it. It caught me off guard. He'd recognized my face. Not from the trial, but from something deeper. The look of someone who's survived something ugly. "Do you ever wish you'd stayed quiet?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. No, because silence would have made me complicit, because my mother didn't die in an accident, because truth, once spoken, doesn't belong to the people who tried to bury it. I wasn't the weak one. I was the witness, and witnesses don't disappear. They endure. The thing no one tells you about revenge is this: it doesn't end when the handcuffs click shut. It ends much later, in quieter moments, when no one is watching, when you finally have the space to feel everything you postponed just to survive. The trial faded from headlines faster than I expected. There was a new scandal, a new villain, a new cycle of outrage to consume. The world moved on, like it always does. I didn't. Not right away. Some mornings, I woke up convinced I'd hear my father's voice in the kitchen. Other days, I reached for my phone to check a burner that no longer existed. Trauma doesn't vanish just because justice shows up late. It lingers, but it also changes shape. One evening, months after everything ended, I stood behind the counter at the bookstore during a slow hour. Rain tapped against the windows, soft and steady. I was restocking a shelf when a familiar name caught my eye. A true crime book. My family's case. I froze. My fingers trembled as I pulled it free. The cover showed a courthouse I knew too well. The title was dramatic, sensational. Inside, there were chapters about power, corruption, betrayal. There was a paragraph about the daughter. No name, just a role. She chose truth over blood, it said. That was it. I closed the book and slid it back into place. For the first time, that felt enough. I didn't need recognition. I needed closure. And closure came in small, unexpected ways. Like the first time I laughed without checking who might hear it. Like the first holiday I spent alone and felt peaceful instead of lonely. Like the moment I realized I hadn't checked the locks twice before bed. The past lost its grip slowly, one breath at a time. Sometimes I imagined my father in his cell. The loss of control must have been unbearable for him. A man who built his world on fear, now surrounded by it. I didn't feel guilty about that. He'd chosen his life. So had I. I visited my mother's grave one spring morning. The town was quiet. Birds chirped. The air smelled like wet earth and new beginnings. I knelt and placed fresh flowers at the headstone. "I didn't forget," I whispered. The words felt like a promise kept. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't need to. I stood there for a long time, letting the silence settle. Not the suffocating silence of secrets, but the gentle kind. The kind that means nothing bad is about to happen. Before I left, I said one more thing. You were right. None of them were loyal. But I was. To the truth, to myself, to the girl who remembered when everyone else tried to forget. Revenge didn't turn me into a monster. It freed me from one. And that's the part people don't talk about enough. Justice isn't about destruction. It's about release. About choosing not to carry someone else's sins just because they share your blood. I still live quietly. I still work among books and coffee and small, ordinary moments. And I like it that way. Because peace isn't loud, it doesn't announce itself. It just shows up one day and stays. Some families are built on love, others are built on fear. Walking away from the latter doesn't make you disloyal. It makes you free. Truth has a cost, but silence costs more.